Estamos grabando la clase del grupo 2 de la UDLA del día viernes 3 de septiembre. La intención de hoy día entonces es poder avanzar hasta Complex Compound Sentences. Teníamos este trabajo entregado la semana pasada, usted lo tendría que haber hecho en su casa y hoy día lo vamos a revisar. La semana pasada creo que alcanzamos a revisar las dos primeras, así que continuamos desde la que sigue. Si alguien tiene alguna duda, comentario, sugerencia, puede prender su micrófono y decirlo, ¿ya? Personally, I'm always ready to learn, although I do not always like being taught. Okay, so the very first stuff I'm going to say, this is a clause. This is not any type of clause. This has two different clauses. One of them is an independent clause and the other one is a dependent clause. Therefore, we can label this as a complex sentence. So the first stuff I'm going to do is trying to look for the independent clause. That is to say, the one with more meaning and valency pattern. When I read it personally, I'm always ready to learn, although I do not always like being taught, and I already find out the independent clause, which is personally, I'm always ready to learn. And then the dependent clause is, although I do not always like being taught. So I'm going to...
Profe,
Dígame,
disculpe por interrumpirlo.
dígame.
Me parece que habíamos quedado hasta la número 3. Por lo menos yo la tengo hecha hasta la
Habíamos
3.
hecho la 2. Ah,
Sí,
maravilloso, avancemos, ya,
que
pues mucho
había,
mejor.
había estado un poco complicada la número 2,
Sí,
por lo que recuerdo.
ya, maravilloso. Let's go with number 3 then. I fished until the sun went down. Okay, the very first stuff. The very first thing I'm going to say, this is a complex sentence. It's made out of an independent and a dependent clause. I'm going to look for the independent clause. The independent one is I fished, and then the dependent is until the sun went down, right? So I'm going to mark the verb phrase, verb, fished. Who fished? I fished. Until when? Until the sun went down, right? So I have a verb phrase verb with a verb head and a noun phrase subject with a pronoun head. Then I have until the sun went down. This is a subordinate clause acting as an adverbial of time, right? Until when? Until the sun went down. The analysis inside of it then is until is a
Profe,
subordinating conjunction. Dígame.
disculpe, ¿por qué están round brackets y no square brackets?
Porque porque yo me equivoqué, perdón. Oh, lo hice al principio. Espera. Vamos, ya, ok. Square brackets. Gracias. Noun phrase, subject, verb phrase, verb, subordinate, clause, adverbial, pronoun head, verb head, subordinate conjunction. The sun went down. Went down is phrasal verb. Therefore, one single lexeme, verb phrase verb, verb head, the sun. The sun is a noun phrase subject made out of a determiner, pre-modifier, and then the noun head, sun. And that's it. And that's it.
Profe, consulta. Siempre que sea phrasal verb, todo la phrasal verb es un verb head, ¿cierto?
Sí.
Ah, ya, gracias.
Okay. Well, be careful with this. What happens if you have this will go down, right? The phrasal verb is go down, but will is still an auxiliary verb. Right? So you have to pay attention to the auxiliary verbs that the phrasal verb might have. Okay, any other question?
Profe, entonces se dice go down es todo el verbo, ¿no?
Sí, exacto.
Ya.
Phrasal verbs, they have a common characteristic, which is they are composed of a verb plus an adverbial particle but the meaning cannot be retrieved. You can't understand the verb by its components. That is to say, go down doesn't mean going down. It means to set, colocarse, fundirse, hundirse. ¿Sí? Okay, I'll move on. I met my wife in London, where she grew up from a young age. Okay. This is also a complex sentence. I won't say complex sentence. This is something different. This is a simple sentence, I believe, with a noun phrase, a very long noun phrase. We'll see it. What I have then is met is the verb phrase verb with the verb head. Met, who met? I met. Noun phrase, subject, pronoun head. I met whom, right? Whom did I meet? I met my wife. Noun phrase, object, determiner, premodifier, and noun head. Where did I meet my wife? I met her in London, where she grew up from a young age. This whole stuff is a prepositional phrase, right? Adverbial of place, because it answers the question where. And then inside of it, I have the preposition head in, and then I have the noun phrase complement. Darinka?
Profe, si por ejemplo en una, bueno, en la prueba o la cátedra yo pongo entre paréntesis solo in London, ¿estaría malo?
En este caso sí, porque where she grew up from a young age no, identifica o caracteriza a London, no al resto. Piénsalo, léelo.
Ah, ya, gracias.
¿Sí? Está dentro de London, está dentro de esa noun phrase. Esta es una noun phrase complement hecha de el noun head London y eso. Eso es una WH, relative clause. Why do I call it relative clause? Relative clauses, relative clauses, relative clauses, they are different from subordinate clauses. They are not the same. Relative clauses are usually, not always, but usually inside of noun phrases, or in other words, inside of phrases, right? Meanwhile, subordinate clauses are linked, joined, attached to independent clauses, right? So you can find them in different syntactic environments, I would say, right? So the WH relative clause, why do I call it WH relative clause? Because of the presence of the relative determiner where, right? Because it begins with the WH word where that I call it WH relative clause, right? This stuff can be a post modifier, that is to say, is optional information, or it can be a complement, meaning that it is obligatory information. So I'm going to read it again. I met my wife in London, where she grew up from a young age. I think it's optional. It is not necessary in order to understand London. Therefore, I would say it's just a post modifier. Now, I need to know which phrases are inside of it. So I'm going to read it, where she grew up from a young age, and then I can see the verb, the phrasal verb grew up, right? Who grew up, where she grew up, right? So this is the subject. I add and I put inside the WH word where, right? Inside of the noun phrase. So be careful with that once you're dealing with WH relative clauses. And then I can see from a young age, right? Grew up since when? Since a young age. So it's a time thing as well From is a preposition, therefore prepositional phrase. So all over again, noun phrase subject, where is a determiner, pre-modifier followed by a noun, a pronoun. Oh, what did I do? What have it done? Pronoun head. Then we have grew up, verb phrase, verb head, and then we have from a young age, which is a prepositional phrase, adverbial of time with a preposition, head, noun phrase, complement, a young age, determiner, pre-modifier, adjective, pre-modifier, noun head. And that would be. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to go with the other one. Once my husband finishes work, we will go shopping. I'm going to go and look for the independent clause, which is we will go shopping, and the dependent one, which is once my husband finishes work. So I'm going to identify the verb phrase with the verb head and the auxiliary verb, pre-modifier. Who will go? We will go. Noun phrase subject made out of a pronoun head. We will go where? Yeah, to do what? Shopping, right? This is a noun phrase object then, and this is a noun head. Once my husband finishes work, okay, this is one thing, is a dependent clause. Not any dependent clause, is a subordinate clause. Subordinate clause acting as an adverbial. Why subordinate? Because of the presence of this subordinating conjunction. My husband finishes work. This is our verb phrase. Verb phrase verb made out of the verb head finishes. Who finishes? My husband, right? This is a noun phrase subject made out of the noun head husband and the determiner pre-modifier my finishes what? Work. This is another noun phrase acting as an object, right? The receiver of the action made out of the noun head work. And that's it. Any problem? Number 6. You should
Profe,
take,
¿por qué era una subordinate clause?
porque parte con una subordinating conjunction.
Ah,
Once.
gracias.
Okay. Any other question?
Sí.
Dígame.
¿Por qué siempre cuando hace estos ejercicios solo marca una cláusula y la otra no la marca, no le pone nombre ni nada? No sé si entiende a lo que me refiero.
Sí, debido a esto, lo que estás viendo puede ser entendido también como un rectángulo. En este rectángulo tenemos un valency pattern, que es así. Shopping, will go, we. Sujeto, we. Verbo, will go. Shopping, objeto. Y aquí hay un adverbial. ¿Sí? Entonces, si yo dijera, ¿qué es esto? Esto es una complex sentence, ¿cierto? Que tiene este valency pattern. ¿Sí? Sí. El tema es que este adverbial está hecho por una subordinate clause. ¿Qué quiere decir eso? Voy a cambiar el lápiz solo por un tema de diseño. Que adentro de esto, yo también tengo un verbo, un sujeto y un objeto. Es por eso que digo que le coloco un nombre solo a una parte de la oración, no a toda, debido a que esa pequeña parte de la oración, está hecha de una cláusula. No sé si
Y
entiendes.
lo otro no es una cláusula, entonces.
Todo esto es una cláusula. Y una
Ah,
parte
pero
de la
dentro de esa
cláusula,
cláusula hay otra.
exacto, por eso se llama complex sentence.
Ah, ya. Y otra cosa, va a identificar cuál es esa cláusula la que tenemos que marcar. Siempre hay que identificar cuál es como, ¿cómo se dice? La dependiente.
Claro, estamos hablando de complex clauses. Dibujo. Estamos hablando de sentences, ¿sí? Sentences. Sentences que son de diferentes tipos. Existe la simple sentence, existe la complex sentence, existe la compound sentence y existe la mezcla de la complex con la compound. Compound, complex o complex compound, como le quieras nombrar. Complex compound. Ya, ¿de qué nos sirve saber esto? Que la simple sentence está hecha de una independent clause. ¿Sí? Que la complex sentence está hecha de una independent clause más una o más or more dependent clauses. ¿Ya? Ya. La compound son dos o más independent y la complex compound es la mezcla de la complex con la compound. Eso es lo que te voy a decir. Una independent clause entonces, it has full meaning on its own. It has full meaning on its own. Por ejemplo, I play tennis. Tú la ves, la miras y comprendes lo que dice. ¿Sí? Sí. Una dependent clause no tiene full meaning on its own. It hasn't got. Therefore, si yo leyera because I want it, no me queda claro de lo que está hablando. ¿Cierto? Cierto. Una dependent clause, aparte de eso, usually begins with a subordinating conjunction. Que en este caso es la palabra because. ¿Ya? Y lo que ocurre es lo siguiente. La dependent clause se le pega a la independent clause. Y cuando pasa eso, se crea una complex sentence. Por lo tanto, y para resumir la respuesta, yo puedo identificar una dependent clause de una independent clause por la presencia del subordinating conjunction y porque no tiene significado completo. Ay, porque no tiene significado completo por sí misma. Otra cosa importante de una subordinate dependent clause es que si se coloca delante del sujeto, lo separa de él una coma, que está ahí, no se ve muy bien. Eso. No sé si queda claro.
Sí, profe, me quedó mucho más claro, muchas gracias.
Ya,
Profe,
dígame.
pero eso pasa cuando está adelante de la
Exacto,
independent clause, porque
exacto.
en la otra, en la anterior, en in London,
Estaba
estaba adentro,
adentro de una frase. Esa funciona diferente.
porque estaba complementando la información, ¿cierto?
Sí, exacto. Mira la número 6.
Ah, ya.
You should take an umbrella because it will rain today. ¿Cuál será la independent clause?
You should take an umbrella.
Excelente, muy bien. Por lo tanto, esa es la que tiene el verbo. You should take an umbrella. Entonces, should take es la verb phrase. Y con esta verb phrase encuentro todo el resto de las componentes. ¿Quién debería tomar el umbrella? You.
You.
Ese es el sujeto, ¿no? ¿Qué es lo que debería tomar?
Umbrella,
¿Y por qué?
because it will rain today.
¿Cachaste que esa es la dependent clause? Y aquí está mi subordinating conjunction. Probemos si acaso tenemos razón. Coloquémosla adelante y debería tener sentido. Because it will rain today, you should take an umbrella. Ah, sí tiene sentido. Esa es. Adentro,
Entonces, profe, si la dependent clause empezara con una relative clause, estaría dentro, no
muy
por fuera.
bien, muy bien,
Ya.
muy bien, muy bien. Mira, el tema este es que las dependent clauses no es solo un tipo, son las subordinate clauses, ¿cierto? Las WH relative clauses y las that relative clauses. Entonces las subordinate clauses son las que parten con subordination, con una subordinating conjunction. Y ellas son las que en un balancing pattern se transforman usualmente en el adverbial. Y es debido a eso que se pueden mover.
Y con eso nos quiere decir, profe, que casi siempre las dependent clause van a ser adverbiales.
Las subordinate clauses. Dentro de las
Ay,
dependent, las subordinate clauses.
ay.
¿Cachai? Porque las WH relative son post modifiers adentro de una noun phrase. Piénsalo como la palabra who. The people who were there o con where. The match where you obtained the prize. ¿Cachai? Todo eso es una noun phrase. Y entonces las WH relatives están adentro de una noun phrase. Al igual que las that. Your
Me queda
friend.
mucho más claro, profe.
Sí, buena, esa era. Esa era. Después ustedes van a cachar, cuando sigan estudiando en su posgrado o en otros lados, si quieren ya meterse más de lleno a este tema, van a cachar que existen a lo menos unas 20 cláusulas dependientes más, pero se ocupan de otra forma en otros lugares. Estas son como las básicas, ¿ya? Pero eso es lo importante, para que cachen.
Profe,
Dígame.
¿y las ing clauses? ¿Esas son, dependen igual?
Son dependentes. No
Igual,
pueden
vale.
estar solas.
Ok, profe, gracias.
Buena, muy bien. Ya, vamos con esto. Se empieza a armar el rompecabezas, ¿o no?
Sí, profe. Mucho más
Ahora
ahora
sí.
queda
De
claro.
a poco se va entendiendo más.
Ya. Entonces cachamos que esta because it will rain today es una subordinate clause y se mueve porque es adverbial. ¿Adverbial de qué? Del verbo should take. Ahora, este adverbial está hecho de una cláusula, por lo tanto también tiene un verbo y un sujeto y toda esa cosa dentro. Por eso will rain es el verbo, it es el sujeto y when today. ¿Sí? Dos cosas, auxiliary verb, pre-modifier, verb head. Me equivoqué. Noun phrase, subject, pronoun head. Y today es un adverb phrase, adverbial of time with an adverb head. ¿Dudas? No? Avanzo. 7. You will be able to buy a car if you complete your driving test. Who can tell me where is the independent clause? Can you tell me?
You will be able to buy a car.
Excelente. Muy bien. Esa es la independent clause. ¿Y la dependent cuál es entonces?
If you complete your driving test.
Excelente. Probemos que es una independent. Coloquémosla adelante.
If you complete your
With your
driving
driving
test,
test, you will be
you
able.
will be able to buy a car.
Funciona. Esa es la dependent. Como es cláusula, cuadrado. You will be able to buy. You will be able to buy. Esa es la verb phrase. ¿Por qué? Una verb phrase can be composed of several different verbs. We know that. One of those verbs is the main verb or verb head, and the rest of them are auxiliary verbs, pre-modifiers, right? Right. The thing is that will is one auxiliary verb, pre-modifier, and buy is the verb head. The problem is be able to. Be able to is called semi-modal verb. And the special thing is the fact that it goes with a to at the end of it. But that to is part of the verb, right? Be able to, even though it's composed of 3 different words, I don't like the term, but they are something like words, right? It's just one single verb, therefore one single auxiliary verb pre-modifier. Are there any others? Any other semi-modal verbs? Yes, there are tons of them. For example, need to, or want to, or even have to. For you to remember, be careful. So who will be able to buy a car? You, right? So this is my noun phrase, subject, made out of a pronoun head. This is the verb phrase, verb. We will be able to buy what? A car. This is a noun phrase object made out of the noun head car and the determiner pre-modifier a. Then if you complete your driving test, then is a subordinate clause acting as an adverbial. Why? Because it begins with a subordinate conjunction. Then I have to look for I must look for the verb phrase, right? So you complete your driving test. Complete, that would be the verb phrase. Who complete? You complete. What do you complete? Your driving test, right? So you would be my noun phrase subject made out of the pronoun head. You. Complete would be my verb phrase verb made out of the verb head. And your driving test then is the noun phrase object, your driving test. Determiner, pre-modifier, noun, pre-modifier, and test, my noun head And that's it. Any
Profe,
question? Dígame.
el driving test no se podría considerar como solo el eczema.
Yo no lo haría porque hay otros tipos de test. Yo podría decir también reading test, translation
Ya.
test. ¿Cachai? Que lo puedo cambiar, entonces no es que sea único y especial.
Ya, ok, está bien.
Eso.
Profe, en
Sí.
este caso, driving no se puede considerar como adjetivo.
No, porque es un verbo, es un noun. Es un noun que funciona como pre-modifier. Recuerda que dentro de una noun phrase, como pre-modifier puedes encontrar adjectives, adjective phrases y nouns.
Ok. Ya, gracias.
Okay. Any other question? No? Good then. Good. Good, 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 good. Podemos avanzar. Ya. No me gusta este PowerPoint porque está desordenado. Ya, vimos entonces complex sentence, lo hicimos. Sample of complex sentences, ya hicimos análisis de esto. Compound complex, no hemos visto eso porque todavía no sabemos lo que es compound. Sample of complex compound, todavía no lo vemos porque no sabemos lo que es compound. Test yourself, todavía no podemos porque no sabemos lo que es compound. Dependent clauses, aquí sí porque con esto armamos complex sentences. Dependent clauses, a subordinate clause is a clause that supports ideas stated in the main clause. We know that, right? That's why they are attached to an independent clause, because they provide more information. Subordinate clauses are also dependent on a main clause and would be otherwise incomprehensible without them. Now, take into account the following examples, right? So the very first one of them is the one we were analyzing during our previous assignment, because she was sick, right? Once you read that, you see that because she was sick is a subordinate clause because it begins with the subordinate conjunction because, right? And the rest you already know that. The second one is what I call a WH relative clause, right? What was in the middle of the who was in the middle of the road. In that case, you can see that there is a difference between that and the first one. The difference is in the second, you don't have a subordinate clause, but the link is made by the relative pronoun who, right? So who is the one which is linking the relative clause to the head, to the noun head, most commonly. And in the third example, you can see that it isn't like any of the other two, but it's different because in the third example, you can see that the WH word is before a pronoun, right? Therefore, what you have there is a relative determiner. Okay, I will recap the information. The first example is the common example of a subordinate clause. And you can see the presence of a subordinate conjunction, that is to say the word because. The second example is an example of a WH relative clause where the link is not created by a subordinate conjunction, but by a relative pronoun, the relative pronoun who, right? And in the third example, you can see that it is also not like any of the other two previous examples, and you can see the presence of whatever you do, right? So whatever you is a noun phrase, and inside of that you have the relative determiner, whatever, right? And it is this determiner, the one which is creating the link between the dependent and the main clause. Okay. Okay. Subordination. Therefore, whenever you see the presence of an independent plus a dependent clause, that is to say, a complex sentence, what you're seeing then is a process called subordination, subordinación. There are two kinds of clauses. The main clause, we know that, and the subordinate clause, we know that. A main clause, also called independent clause, we know that, can stand by itself and make sense. We know that. A subordinate clause, we know them, also called a dependent clause, we know them, is a group of words, it's a group of phrases, in fact, that contains a subject and a predicate, obviously because it is a clause, therefore there's a valency pattern, but depends on the main clause to complete its meaning. We know that. So the example, we will not leave the house until it stops raining, right? So we will not leave the house is the independent or main clause. Meanwhile, unless it stops raining is the subordinate or dependent clause, right? You can see that the process of linking is called subordination. Any problem?
No, profe.
Okay, a subordinate clause, that is to say, also called dependent clause, will begin with a subordinate conjunction, right? We know that because subordinate clauses will begin with subordinate conjunctions, right? Or a relative pronoun. When you have a relative pronoun, what you have is a WH clause, and will contain both the subject and the verb. Obviously, because we're talking about clauses, and clauses, they have subjects and verbs, and some other stuff like complements, objects, and adverbials. This combination of words will not form a complete sentence. Yes, we're talking about the subordinate clause, right? It will instead make a reader want additional information to finish the thought. We know that. And here you have a full list of subordinate conjunctions, right? Again, these are the words that will begin a subordinate clause. Be careful because you also have the other words like that. Me, myself, I'm stating a difference between with the WH words, when, whenever, where, whereas, wherever, whether, while, and all those. Those are different from the others, I believe. In the following, you have relative pronouns, the ones that I already told you, right? Be careful with the one with that, right? So that's different. And I think that's so far with the idea of complex sentences. Any question? No?
No, profe.
Ok, break. 15 minutos, volvemos a las 14:25 y volvemos con el PPT que les envié a su correo, que es este de aquí. Dame un segundo. Universidad de Sudra, Grammar 2, Coordination. Este, que está en su correo. Ya volvemos con ese. Volvemos a las 14:25. Estamos grabando. Compound sentence and coordination. This is a very old presentation. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so compound sentences. A sentence with two or more independent clauses, right? So as we already discussed, a compound sentence is when you have two or more independent clauses together, right? The process is called then. Okay, gracias, Fernanda. The process then is called coordination. Okay, so I'm going to write it down in our notes so we can start doing a summary. So sort of. Okay, compound sentence, compound sentence, that is to say, coordination. Right? Okay, so a compound sentence is when we have two or more independent clauses together. So our first example is this. I went to cinema, I watched Superman. And then I'm going to put them together by using the word and, right? Therefore, the result is I went to the cinema and I watched Superman, right? The clauses are linked by a coordinator or coordinating conjunction, fanboys, okay? So what we have is this. We have that coordination is created by the presence of a type of word, which is called conjunction. There are at least two different types of them. We have the subordinating conjunctions and we have the coordinating conjunctions, right? Subordinating conjunctions will create then subordination, which is a complex sentence. Meanwhile, coordinating conjunctions will create coordination, which are compound sentences. Okay, good. Coordinating conjunctions, they also have a further division into ones that are called correlative coordinators. Okay. Now, coordinating conjunctions are not correlative coordinators, but coordinating conjunctions can be better summarized coordinating conjunctions can be better summarized with the acronym FANBOYS. FAN, this is a capital B, which are the words for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Okay. Meanwhile, correlative coordinators are different because they are the words either, or in American English, either, followed by the coordinator or, neither, or in American English, neither, followed by nor, both, and perhaps there's another one, not only, but also. Okay, good. There are two types of coordination as well, and they deal, or they, or they are, or yeah, or they're different one from another because of the presence of the coordinating conjunction. The first of them is called the synthetic coordination, which means that the coordinator is present at the surface level. When I say surface level, I'm saying that you can actually read or listen the presence of to the presence of the coordinating conjunction, just like in the example. I went to the doctor and he gave me medicine, right? So because of the presence of the coordinating conjunction, we can say this is synthetic coordination. Asynthetic is the opposite. That is to say, the coordinator is not present at the surface level, but it is present in the deep or semantic level. So, for example, I went to the doctor, comma, he gave me medicine. In this example, we don't have the presence of the coordinating conjunction, but we can understand it because of the context. conjunctions and structures. Coordinating and correlative conjunctions, they join different stuff, okay? So they can join or link, in fact, it's join, right? They can join words like in the example, Mays and Yuri fled the war in Armenia, right? Or with the correlative conjunctions. In the second example, the book is neither well written nor interesting. We're going to provide an analysis for both of them, okay? Mace and Yuri fled the war in Armenia. So I'm going to look for the verb phrase, right? The verb phrase is fled. This is my verb phrase verb with the verb head fled. Now the question is who fled? Mace and Yuri. And as you can see, this is a noun phrase. Why? Because I can replace the entire unit by the pronoun they. They fled, right? Now, Maze is a noun head, and Yuri is also another noun head in the very same noun phrase. And they are joined by the presence of the coordinating conjunction and, right? The rest is the very same as always. The war were in Armenia. I won't do it because it's just the normal analysis. As you can see, the coordinating conjunction and then is joining two different noun heads. In this respect, we can state this is coordination of noun heads. ¿Alguna pregunta? No, perfecto.
No, profe.
Perfecto. Let's go with the second one. The book is neither well written nor interesting. So I'm going to repeat the very same idea. So what we're going to do is looking for the verb phrase, which is this one, right? Verb phrase, verb. Who is the book is subject. The book is what? Neither well written nor interesting. Therefore, there's just one single unit over here, right? This unit then is composed of some further units, right? Those units are well written and interesting, right? So neither is a correlative conjunction and nor is also part of that. Then well written is an adjective phrase. No, well written, yeah. No, well written, it is not an adjective, is neither well written nor is interesting, is well written. Well written. I would say well written is not an adjective thing. Let me dudé, perdón, dudé. Déjame buscar written para no mentir. Verbo, adjetivo. Adjetivo, muy bien. Eran adjective phrases, no estaba loca, no estaba loco. Adjective phrases. Therefore, this is an adjective phrase acting as a subject complement, and interesting is also an adjective phrase acting as a subject complement, right? In this case, what we have is an adverb pre-modifier and an adjective head. And in this another case, we just have an adjective head, right? In this case, what we have is coordination of adjective phrases. Phrases, subject, complement. As you can see, coordination means then that we are going to take 2 or more units and we are going to create just 1 unit out of all those that we have, okay? Let's go with the following. Phrases. Okay, this is, I would say, a little bit more difficult than the previous one. We're going to take this example. They are glad to be in the United States, but are still homesick. And I'm going to look for the verb phrases, okay? So they are glad to be in the United States, but are still homesick. It's difficult because I can see 2 different verb phrases, right? The very first of them is this one. Crap, come on. This one, and the other one is over here, right? Right. Then I can see who's the person I'm talking about? They, right? They are glad to be in the United States. But what happens with the second verb phrase? If you read it, I'm going to read it again. They are glad to be in the United States, but are still homesick. Who's the subject for the second part? Is the very same subject for the first part, right? So they are glad and they are still homesick. Therefore, we are sharing the same subject. They are what? They are glad to be in the United States, but they are still homesick. Okay. So what we have is a noun phrase subject, a verb phrase verb. This is an adjective phrase acting as a subject complement. And over here, I have my coordinating conjunction and another verb phrase and another adjective phrase subject complement, right? Right. Therefore, what I'm linking the verb phrases and the adjective phrases. So I can say this is coordination of verb phrases and adjective phrases subject complements. Okay, let's do it. I'm going to do the easiest part first. Pronoun head, verb head, verb head, adverb pre-modifier, adjective head. Okay, the adjective, this adjective phrase is really difficult. Glad is the adjective, head, but then I have to be in the United States. To be in the United States is a clause. How do I know is a clause? Because of the presence of the verb phrase to be. To be is a verb phrase, right? It is created by the presence of the true infinitive form of the verb be. Therefore, I'm going to separate it by using square brackets. The name for this clause is true infinitive clause and is acting as a complement. I can't erase it. And inside of it, I have the verb phrase to be where in the United States, a prepositional phrase with a noun phrase complement. So I'm going to put here the verb phrase verb to be made out of the verb head to be. And next to that, the prepositional phrase adverbial of place in the United States made out of the preposition head in and the noun phrase complement the United States with the determiner premodifier D and the noun United States. Be careful with that because I'm going to change colors just for adding a note. Adjective phrases, they can have complements, right? And these complements, that is to say, obligatory modifiers, post modifiers, obligatory. That's why they are called complements. They can be to infinitive clauses or they can be prepositional phrases. Okay? Prepositional phrases when once you have comparatives, like for example, bigger than you. This is an adjective phrase with a prepositional phrase. That's the noun phrase complement. This is the adjective head. And this is the prepositional phrase complement. You can't erase it. And inside of it, you have the preposition head and the noun phrase complement. You can't erase it. Made out of the pronoun in this case. Okay, any problem?
Profe, ¿habría alguna posibilidad de hacer otro ejercicio?
Por supuesto.
No me queda
millones,
muy claro, la verdad. Como que me perdí en lo último.
cientos de miles de millones, no te preocupes.
Profe, yo tengo una duda.
Dígame.
¿Por qué en ese ejemplo, el último, el moradito, la preposición es complement?
Porque no se puede borrar.
Ah, ya.
Porque el
Gracias.
comparativo, el adjetivo necesita la comparación, ¿cachai? El than you, el than. Than es una preposición. Bigger than, ese than es una preposición, o sea, una prepositional phrase.
Ah, ya, y ahí no se puede sacar.
Claro, y por eso es complement. Entonces,
Ah, ya. Gracias.
cuidado con las adjective phrases porque pueden tener como complements cosas que no se pueden sacar. El ejemplo de aquí, una true infinitive o una prepositional phrase. Puede pasar. Por eso lo nombro. Vamos a ver más ejemplos ya. Clauses. Coordinating conjunctions, they can join words, phrases, clauses. Okay, clauses. In fact, coordinating conjunctions, they can join morphemes, lexemes, phrases, clauses, and even sentences. Okay. So I'm going to take a look at this example. I'm going to read it. If you have a 4.0 GPA, and if you graduate on time, many good companies will hire you. Lo que estamos viendo en la pizarra, en la pantalla, es una complex compound sentence. Y este es el nivel o los ejemplos, el nivel diría, la dificultad de los análisis de la cátedra 1. ¿Ya? En esta oración, que es una complex compound sentence, hay 3 cláusulas. 2 de ellas son dependent y una de ellas es independent. La pregunta es, ¿cuál es la independent?
Many good companies will hear you.
Will hire you. Muy bien. Will hire you. Muy bien, muy bien.
Eso will hire you.
Muy bien. ¿Y cuáles serán las dependent?
If you have 40 zero GPA y if you graduate on time. Eso.
If you
No sé si
graduate
me
on
entendí.
time. If you graduate
Eso.
on time. Perfecto. Esa, if you have a 4.0 GPA y la otra, if you graduate on time, están unidas por algo. ¿Por qué están unidas? And, ¿cierto? And, por la coordinating conjunction and. Muy bien. Escríbala en su cuaderno, hágala. Las instrucciones son, escriba en su cuaderno la oración que está en la pantalla y realice un análisis sintáctico de ella. Son las 14:46, le vamos a dar a esto 10 minutos. Hasta las 14:56 nos vamos a juntar. ¿Ya? Realícelo y lo revisamos. Volvimos. Muy bien. ¿Estamos grabando, no? Sí, estamos grabando. Okay, therefore what we're going to do is many good companies will hire verb, phrase, verb, auxiliary verb, pre-modifier, and verb head. Who will hire you? Many good companies. Noun, phrase, subject, determiner, pre-modifier, adjective, pre-modifier, and finally noun head. They will hire who? You. Noun, phrase, object, and pronoun head. Then we have all the dependent clauses if you have a whatever, right? So what I have is the presence of this dependent and the presence of this another dependent, right? Joined or linked by the presence of this coordinating conjunction. If you have a 4.0 GPA, you have, right? Who, what. Therefore, what I have here is a subordinate clause acting as an adverbial, and over here the very same idea. Subordinate clause acting as an adverbial. If is our subordinate conjunction, you is our noun phrase subject made out of a pronoun head, have is a verb phrase verb head, and what, right? So this is a noun phrase object, a determiner, pre-modifier 4.0 is also another determiner, right? So numbers are determiners. Pre-modifier and GPA is a noun. The other one. If you graduate on time, graduate would be the verb. Who? When on time. So this is an adverbial prepositional phrase. So this is our subordinate conjunction. You is our noun phrase subject, graduate verb phrase verb, on prepositional phrase adverbial. You is a pronoun head, graduate is a verb head, on is a preposition head, followed by a noun phrase complement, and time is a noun head. So what we have is coordination of subordinate clauses. Any problem? Dígame.
Lo último que puso subordination of the subordinate clauses,
Ujú.
eso vale por un puntaje en los ejercicios, ¿cierto?
Claro,
La última parte.
claro, porque hay que reconocer qué es lo que se está uniendo.
Profe. Ok, profe, gracias.
Ujú. ¿Más preguntas?
Profe,
Dígame.
¿qué clase de oración era esta?
Esta es una complex compound sentence
Ok,
porque
Gracias.
tiene una independent unida a una dependent y esa dependent está hecha de la coordinación de dos dependent.
Profe,
Dígame.
the coordination siempre va a ser de las mismas phrases.
¿Cómo?
O sea, por ejemplo, coordination of subordinate clause o noun head.
Perdón, me faltó un dato. Adverbials. Sí, coordinación, muy buena pregunta. Coordinación tiene un elemento que es una pillería. Es que se unen cosas que son iguales. No puedo unir, por ejemplo, un verbo con una oración. No se puede. Siempre tienen que ser al mismo nivel. Cláusula con cláusula, frase con frase, head con head, morpheme con morpheme. ¿Cachai? Las dos están al mismo nivel. De hecho, no sé si lo dirá el Power, no me acuerdo ya. Que se unan cosas del mismo nivel se llama paratactic. Is paratactic. Is a paratactic coordination or joining. Paratactic joining. Que se unen cosas al mismo nivel. ¿Alguna otra pregunta? Avanzo. Clauses. They had to flee their country for they had no future there, right? In the following example, we have the clauses. They had to flee their country for they had no future there. In that respect, the coordinating conjunction for is linking they had no future there, that is to say, an independent clause with they had to flee their country, another independent clause. So what you have is coordination of independent clauses. This process is called parataxis, joining structures at the same level.
Profe,
Dígame.
en ese ejemplo, el for funciona como un because, ¿o no?
No, es como un and.
Ah, ya.
Recordémoslo. Fanboys. Eso, Fabricio, grabártelo en la cabeza. Fanboys son esos. And, but, so, or, nor, yet, for. Fanboys. Y esos funcionan uniendo cosas al mismo nivel. Las subordinating conjunctions unen cosas a diferente nivel.
Ah, ya.
¿Ya? So, coordinators and, but, so, or, nor, yet, for, y the correlative, also called paired conjunctions, both and, not only, but also, either, or, neither, nor. Simple. Orthography. We use a comma when two independent clauses are joined by a coordinating or correlative conjunction. So, students write during class time and they also write at home is a compound sentence because it is composed of two independent clauses coordinated by the coordinating conjunction and, right? As both of them are independent clauses, they are separated by a comma. The same with the second part. Okay. Do not use a comma when the two phrases or words are joined. Okay. So we are just going to use commas when we are dealing with clauses. But when you're dealing with smaller units, you don't use a comma. So for example, computer scientists and engineers need to be good writers. This is a very interesting one. And escríbala en su cuaderno y la realiza, por favor. 15:01, nos juntamos a las 15:10. Computer scientists and engineers need to be good writers. Escríbala en su cuaderno y realícela. Muy bien, regresamos y revisamos. Computer scientists and engineers need to be good writers. So I'm going to look for the main verb. The main verb is need to be, right? As I already explained you, the idea of a semi-modal verb. Need to is a semi-modal verb. So this is a verb phrase verb and be is the verb head. And need to is the auxiliary verb pre-modifier. Who need to be, right? Computer scientists and engineers, right? Because I can even replace the entire thing by saying they. So this stuff is a noun phrase subject. So it's computer scientists and engineers, right? Let's do the other one because it's easier. Need to be what? Good writers. So this is another noun phrase. And I would say this is an object, need to be this, right? Deme un segundo, lo vemos al tiro. Good writers. And writers is the noun head and good is the adjective pre-modifier. Now the question is, computer scientists and engineers and is a coordinating conjunction which joins engineers and scientists, right? So computer scientists and engineers. I would say computer scientist is one single lexeme. So that's the name, I think, right? I would say this is a noun head and engineers is another noun head, right? So what we have in here is coordination of noun heads. Noun heads. Constanza, profe, me quedé con una duda de la oración anterior. Usted dijo que era complex compound, pero esas se supone que tienen dos independent clauses. Oh, espérame. ¿Ya? One or more dependent. Y la oración anterior solo tiene una tiene solo una independent. Tiene toda la razón. Tiene solo una independent. Sí, tienes toda la razón. Es una complex. Complex. A pesar de que hay coordinación, sigue siendo complex, I would say. En realidad, ya déjame ñoñar un poco con esto. La definición dice que the definition states that complex unit of any kind is when you have the independent one plus something that modifies. So we say then in our example, to be more precise, a complex sentence then is one independent clause plus any number of dependent clauses together, right? Any number of them. Then compound means when you have two or more independent. That's the definition. Yeah, you're right. This is just a complex sentence. You're right. See, if you have 4.0 GPA, is just a complex sentence. Thank you for your help. Okay, let's move on.
Profe, tengo una duda de
Dígame,
la oración que hicimos recién.
dígame.
Es que usted dijo que cuando de computer scientist, dijo que cuando se podía reemplazar la palabra anterior, podían ser dos lexemas separados y ¿no será este el caso?
Might be. Igual sería un noun pre-modifier. Y lo que se sigue mezclando siguen siendo scientists y engineers. Puede ser computer engineers, computer scientists. Funciona.
Ah, ya.
No cambia
Ok.
esto igual. Esto sigue igual, ¿cachai? Solo que computer scientists podemos sacar computers y dejarlo como un noun pre-modifier.
Ah, sí, es que yo lo había hecho así, pensé que estaba incorrecto.
No. Está perfecto. No problem.
Ah, vale.
Ok. Eso. Subject verb concord. Okay. This is one of the interesting things that might happen when you do coordination. The subject closer to the verb determines if the verb is singular or plural in sentences with correlative conjunctions. Let's take a look into this. Not only but my best friends, but my parents are also here. Do you see the problem over here? ¿Ven el problema ahí o no? Not only my best friend, but my parents are also here. Entonces, el problema está en are. Si bien es cierto, el sujeto puede ser my best friend y puede ser my parents, el verbo tiene forma plural, are, which means que es el sujeto o el sujeto más cerca al verbo el que le pone el número. Miren la otra forma. Not only my parents, but my best friend is also here. ¿Queda claro el problema o no?
Profe, yo no entendí.
Que cuando tengo dos sujetos, como aquí, así. Both you and my friend XXXX big. I don't know. Aquí quiero poner el verbo to be. ¿Qué forma le pongo?
Is.
Is,
Singular.
singular, no are. ¿Por qué?
Porque el último sujeto es uno,
Excelente.
es singular.
Esa es, el último sujeto del que mandan el verbo. ¿Le queda claro a la compañera?
Sí, profe, gracias.
Siempre va a mandar como el último sujeto.
El sujeto más cercano al verbo es el que manda.
Y por ejemplo, si yo dijera, a ver, no sé qué decir, no sé,
Piénsalo
como
en español.
María y Javiera, por ejemplo, igual sería is.
Depende de lo que diga. Pues María y Javiera. No
Porque
funciona
para
así. Tiene que ser con el
no.
both, tiene que ser con el both
Ah, ok.
adelante. Ambas,
Ah,
María
ya,
y
ya, ya.
Javiera, son, ¿cachai?
Ah, ok, ya, entiendo. Gracias.
¿Cacharon cómo funciona el both, cierto?
Profe, y otra duda. En el primer ejemplo que puso, si yo cambio my friend y pongo you, ahí sería are.
You are, sí.
Ah, ya, gracias.
Sí. Perfecto. Hoy avanzamos rápido con ustedes, son bacanes. Bueno. Use of conjunctions. Do not join, ya. Coordinating conjunctions, ya. With other conjunctions within the same sentence. Although he got a B on the test, but he's still not happy. ¿Y por qué alguien haría eso? Although, porque está en español. Aunque él se sacó una B, aunque él se sacó un 2, pero él no tiene ningún sentido ni en español, pues no hagan eso. Ni en español tiene sentido. Although no se ocupan los dos juntos, pues si sabemos que no se ocupan. Ya, nada que hacer con eso. Meaning of coordinators. Okay. There are certain coordinators which are quite easy to use, like for example, and, which means e, right? To add information. We are going to write essays and read many articles in this class, right? So we are adding information. The problem is, well, but is also quite simple to use, pero. We will work hard, but it will be fun to learn a lot. Okay, no problem, quite easy to use. Or also easy to use. The first assignment will be a narrative or an argumentative essay. No problem, quite similar to Spanish. This is different. The teacher is a hard grader, yet her scores are always fair. ¿Alguien se le ocurre cómo traducir yet?
¿Aún? ¿Todavía?
Aún así, yo diría, ¿no? The teacher is a hard grader. Aún así, sus scores siempre son justos. Aún así, Aún puede ser también. Anótelo, anótelo. Porque and, but, or está fácil, po. Son iguales en español. Yet es un poquito más difícil. Existe en español, pero no lo ocupamos tanto, creo. So, entonces, fácil también. For. Ya, este también es difícil. He will pass the class for he worked hard and got good grades. ¿A alguien se le ocurre qué significa for?
Profe, no sé si está bien, pero usualmente yo lo traduzco como para o para eso. ¿Está bien? ¿Está mal?
Es que dice, él pasará la clase debido a que él trabaja duro, él trabajó muy duro y tuvo muy buenas notas.
Pero para eso igual funcionaría, y, pues para eso el trabajo.
No, pues ahí le cambié el sentido.
Profe,
Sí, sí.
podría ser ya que.
Ya que, claro, puede ser un ya que, sí. A ver, yo soy muy malo traduciendo, chiquillos, porfa, ayúdenme, ustedes saben más que yo. He will pass the class for he worked hard. Debido a, he will pass the class debido a que él trabajó, claro, es un debido a. El punto de aquí es cuidado con for, porque a veces también lo toman como because, pero si lo ocupan como because, lo que están haciendo es una subordinación y no una coordinación. No sé si queda claro, ¿les queda claro?
Sí, profe.
Sí,
Ya.
profe.
Cuidado con la traducción, que este for es más raro. ¿Cómo ocupar both and, not only, but also, to add emphasis? Esto es igual a un and, pero con énfasis. Entonces lo que se une es lo que está entre medio. Both solar and wind energy, ¿qué se une ahí? Está fácil. ¿A alguien se le ocurre? Both solar and wind energy. Ese and, qué está uniendo?
Solar and wind energy.
Excelente. Si lo escribimos con todas las palabras que deberían estar, tendría que decir both solar energy and wind energy. ¿Cachai? Entonces, ese both and, lo que une es lo que está entre both y and. Solar. ¿Qué es solar? Es un noun premodifier de energy. ¿Cierto? Solar energy and wind energy. Entonces lo que está uniendo es solar y wind. ¿Se dan cuenta de eso o no? Gente.
Sí, profe, queda claro.
Sí, necesito que se den cuenta que both and lo que hace es igual a un and, solo que el both se lo ponen adelante de la primera cosa que se une. O sea, si yo juntara a you and me, por ejemplo, y le pusiera poner énfasis both, you and me, ¿cachai? Que el both se lo pongo al principio de la primera cosa que uno, que es you. You and me, both, you and me, ambos dos, tú y yo. Not only, but also funciona de la misma forma. Computer hackers not only slow business, but also damage computer system. ¿Qué está uniendo? Not only, but also. ¿Le quieren tirar lapicito? Computer hackers not only slow business, but also damage computer system. Escríbalo, hágalo en su cuaderno, lo revisamos en 10 minutos. Volvemos a las 15:35. Volvimos. Computer hackers not only slow business, but also damage computer systems. So what we're going to do is looking for the verb phrase. ¿Alguien me puede decir si encontró la verb phrase de esta oración?
La mash.
Ahí hay una. Hay otra más, ¿o no? Aquí está la otra. Computer hackers not only, no solamente slow business, but also damage computers. Lo que intento es que se den cuenta que en una coordinación lo que se hace es unir cosas, ¿sí? Pero estas cosas pueden ser bien grandes también, como verb phrases y objects, computer systems. ¿Okay? Entonces, not only, but also son correlative coordinators, conjunctions. Y lo que están uniendo en este caso son verb phrases y noun phrases objects. ¿Okay? Antes de dejarlos para que comiencen a hacer el workshop, solo quiero asegurarme de algo, chiquillos. ¿Comprenden lo que estoy hablando?
Se entiende, pero igual es medio enredado a veces.
Lo que necesito que entiendan es que el coordinador une dos cosas que son iguales. ¿Sí? Cuando digo iguales, digo forma-función. O sea, une dos noun heads, une dos verb phrases verb, une. ¿Cachai? Pero tienen que ser así, en ese sentido. No importa qué tan grandes o chicas sean, pero tienen que ser en ese sentido, primero. Segundo, este es un trabajo de comprensión lectora. Usted lee y busca lo que lee, ¿cierto? Intenta comprender y intenta poner sentido, como por ejemplo el not only, bla, 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 but also, bla, bla, bla. Y ahí te dice el tiro cuáles son las cosas que unió. ¿Ya? Yo les envié para que trabajen esta hora que queda, 40 minutos, 20 minutos, no queda una hora, quedan como 40 minutos, en verdad. ¿Qué quedan? Les envié esto. Se los voy a mostrar porque lo tiene que hacer para el próximo viernes, ¿vale? Y lo comparto. Esto está en su correo. Workshop, Complex Compound and Complex Compound Clauses. Independent and dependent clauses. Underline the dependent and independent clauses. Label them as independent clause and dependent clause. And there you have an example. ¿Sí? Y con todas. 2. Compound sentences. Underline the coordinated elements in the following sentence. Circle the coordinator. Entonces, lo que debe hacer es marcar en un círculo el coordinador y subraye las cosas que se coordinan. 3. Complex compound sentences. Underline the dependent clause. Underline the coordinated elements and circle both the subordinator and coordinator. En este caso, the dog needed a new leash and, ahí va un círculo, he couldn't go for a walk until he had done. ¿Cierto? Ese until es el otro círculo. ¿Queda claro lo que hay que hacer ahí?
¿Podría explicar de nuevo?
Lo hago con un lapicito con el que tengo yo acá. The dog needed a new leash and he couldn't go for a walk until he had done. Ese and, lo que está uniendo entonces, este and es el coordinador. Y une the dog needed a new leash con he couldn't go for a walk until he had done. ¿Cierto que sí? Sí. Luego cambio de colorcito y marco en un círculo la subordinating conjunction until y vuelvo a subrayar la dependent clause. He had done. Y esta es mi subordinating conjunction. ¿Queda claro?
Sí, profe.
Y con todas para abajo. 4. Write down 3 complex, 3 compound, and 3 complex compound sentences. Ahí la inventa usted. Y luego, provide a syntactic analysis for the following sentences. Son 3 oraciones. Todo eso lo hace durante la semana y lo revisamos el viernes apenas comencemos la clase. ¿Queda claro de lo que hay que hacer?
Sí,
Sí,
profe.
Sí,
profe.
profe.
Sí, profe.
Maravilloso, entonces, chiquillos. Subo el video inmediatamente. El que tenga algún problema que me avise, trabaje y nos juntamos de nuevo la próxima semana en clases. Cuídense mucho.
Gracias, profe.
Gracias,
Chau,
profe.
chau.
Ah,
Chao,
profe,
profe.
gracias.
Ah,
Cuídese.
profe, gracias.
Chao,
Chao,
profe.
profe, gracias.
Chao, profe.